Welcome back to another episode of Wrist Check Podcast. The dynamic duo is back together again. WCP Weekly is in full effect. And this evening, we've got a special conversation or topic for our viewers and listeners. But before we get into that, I just want to encourage you, if you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening on Spotify, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It's very, very important. Make sure that you guys are following us and you stay in tune with new episodes as they release. But today, we're going to talk about, it is Black History Month.
Yes.
And I realized, in conversation we had, that one of the things we never really did was, we've definitely had like Black-owned watch companies on the show. Mm-hmm. But in terms of kind of letting the audience know the wider breadth of what's out there regarding Black-owned watch companies and their product, we've never done an episode kind of dedicated to some of the brands that we're either fans of or those that are kind of like rotating in our sphere and what we're familiar with. So this evening we're going to talk about the top 5, what we think are the top 5 Black-owned watch brands.
Yes.
And but obviously we don't want to break tradition. Mm-hmm. And so before we get into that, we have to have our honorary wrist check.
Yes.
Mr. Smith, what are you wearing on the wrist?
I am wearing a very, very special timepiece, as they all are. Wearing an oldie but a goodie, one that I've been wearing for quite some time now. I put the Rolexes down, put the Patek down, right? And I've decided to stick true to the Oris Diver 65. Momotaro edition, one piece that I absolutely enjoy every time I wear it because it just reminds me of surfing out in Montauk.
Oh, wow. What a life you live.
Oh, man, it's great. The luxuries that we've afforded to be in this space and talk about watches and, moments in time. Like, this is just a watch that I enjoy so much. And it's been fitting to wear as I started a new project called People on Time at Rashawn's Corner. Shout out to our good friend Josh. Shout out to Josh. He wrote a really cool story about the 60th anniversary of the Diver 65.
Awesome.
And so I found it fitting to wear this as we just dropped the article for our new project.
Respect.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Again, I love that watch. It's one of my favorite watches that you own. Regarding Black History Month and Oris, one of the reasons why I love that brand is because they tell these amazing stories working with different estates of sort of famous or significant figures in history. And they have a number of watches that they've done for the estates of African Americans, the Carl Brashear watch, the Art Blakely, Hank Aaron, probably the most recent, and there was the Roberto Clemente piece that they did. And really one of my favorite watch brands. I think if we ever get around to doing, sort of maybe our top 5 watch brands or top 10, Oris would definitely make top 5 for me. I think they have incredible product. Shout out to the folks over there. They're dear friends of ours, and I'm a fan of their timepieces. And this was one that I thought was kind of left field for them because it was a little bit more sophisticated in the fashion sense.
Yes.
Right, to work with a brand like Momotaro and to pair it with a watch like that, it showed that, to me at the very least, that they had their fingers on the pulse and they were kind of immersed in what was going on at the time of the release with this within the menswear scene. So kudos to them, fan favorite. And great watch, my man.
Thank you.
I'm wearing an oldie but a goodie. I'm wearing my vintage Pepsi Rolex, reference 16750, late 80s piece. Love this watch. This is probably my most worn watch of 2024. Really, really great condition. Got it from a dear friend and vintage dealer, Eric Wynn. Shout out to him and Charlie. Yeah, man, it's just the gift that keeps on giving. If you know me, you know I have a thing for dual time watches. Mm-hmm. And the GMT is a classic piece. Vintage Rolex has a special place in my heart. I'm not a really big fan of the modern stuff, though I appreciate it. And it is great product. I have many friends and colleagues that enjoy modern Rolex. But for me, my heart is with vintage. And the reason why I chose this, and I've told this before, but I like to collect, in terms of vintage, the watches that I saw growing up. And so right now I'm kind of on like a late 80s, 90s kind of kick. So I got this, I got the new, well, it's not new, but the vintage Aquanaut, 5065, which is like a late 90s piece, and the Daniel Roth, which is sort of like a mid 90s, 94, 95 piece. And we'll see where I go from there. But love this thing. I've been wearing this for like the last 3 days or so. And I've gone maybe 2 months without wearing it. So it was one of those things where it was like, I was thinking about it. And I was like, oh, do I want to dig in the safe? And I went in there and I was like, oh, let me pull this thing out.
Yeah.
And no, man, it's a gift that keeps on giving. And it matches the fit, you know? So
For sure.
got the vibes going today.
Funny enough, talking about Eric and current events, right? The Grammys was yesterday, right? And
Facts.
Eric actually
Hanging out with Will Smith.
He was able to, lend him a really cool Universal Genève
Pole router. Yeah. Fire piece.
Which was fire.
And very surprising for Will Smith to wear.
Exactly.
We have to talk to Eric about like how that went down and the conversation there. Because I know obviously, Eric is someone who's knee deep in watch knowledge, him and Charlie, and they love to share information. So I'm curious what that conversation was like with Will Smith.
When you think of someone choosing a pole router, although like they've made their resurgence, and I guess it's now on a few people's radar, to your point, like Will Smith could have went with any like kind of
He could have just
showy
wore Rolex.
piece. Yeah, he could have wore Rolex. He could have wore showy piece.
AP or something.
Exactly. But he decides to go with probably one of the most
Very obscure piece.
Yes. So
Definitely if you're not a watch collector,
yeah,
chances are you have no idea what that was.
absolutely.
No, but it's a very important piece.
Super intentional.
If we're, talking about the significance of that piece, that was a Gerald Genta designed watch, who also designed the Royal Oak for AP and the Nautilus for Patek. So it's an important watch, and it's a super important watch to the Universal Genève catalog.
Yes.
Which will have a resurgence. They were recently purchased, or the brand was recently purchased by Breitling, and is coming back. And from the looks of it, with the initial sort of like press release announcement watches that they did, I think one of the things that we can expect some new pole routers. So,
Yeah, for sure.
shout out to Eric. This episode of WCP is sponsored by Bezel, a trusted marketplace for buying and selling watches. With over 18,000 and counting watches listed from both private sellers and professional dealers, you have your pick of the litter from brands like Rolex, AP, Patek, and more. Bezel is one of the highest rated marketplaces for watches. Inside the Bezel app, you can make offers on watches, buy them outright, bid at auction, all with confidence knowing each timepiece is authenticated by an in-house team of experts. For more information, visit getbezel.com or search Bezel in the App Store and download the app today. Getting back in the thick of things, so we are going to talk to you about the top 5 Black-owned watch brands for Black History Month in February. And we've got an honorable mention.
Yes.
Which might surprise some folks.
Yes.
But let's kick things off, and we'll start from 5 and we'll go to 1.
Yes.
Now, many of you might know us for wearing some more luxurious pieces, but we also appreciate the ground level stuff. Myself being a father, Rashawn being a husband to his wife, and a family man with brothers and sisters. You don't always wear this stuff everywhere.
No.
Right? And so we have very diverse collections in terms of brands, but also in terms of price point. And we don't shun lower price point items. I think we have a place for those in our collection as well. And so for number 5, we chose a brand that really has a very large presence, not only in the watch community, but outside of the greater watch community, and with the HBCU community, college students, parents, relatives. And this is a brand that's made a lot of waves in recent years, especially after COVID. It's a brand that I think has really mastered their aesthetic in terms of when you see it, you recognize it immediately, you know what it is. And that's Spring Break.
Yes.
And so Spring Break watches, which they abbreviate the name on their dials to SPGBK. They retail for around $80.
Yes.
Sometimes you can get them on sale, and they're fun, man.
Yes.
They're just a lot of fun. They do like some really amazing colors, and digging into their history, they have sort of a kinship or relationship with the HBCUs and different colleges, but they're known for being affordable and accessible. They have a strong commitment to education. Unique, vibrant designs that celebrate the community and heritage. And this was launched as a school giving program back in 2022 to support teachers. It's just a fun, expressive brand, something that I think is easy to wear, easy to get behind, doesn't break the bank. You can own multiple ones. For me, it's like I have categories in which I can own watches. And for like the Spring Break watch, for me, this is kind of like my barbecue watch.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
And I have to agree with you on that, because there's a bit of, I don't want to say a bit, there is intention behind it in terms of like what the brand stands for, right? You know, college kids don't always have the big budgets to invest in probably the things that they want now, as they're looking to their studies to get into that bigger career and make that big money for those big boy watches.
Right.
But, you know, it kind of puts you in a sort of a sense of pride, right?
Well, yeah, because I think the focus is on community.
Yes.
And I think that's like one of the coolest things about it is especially with the collegiate watches. And I imagine, you know what I'm saying, right now, like with a brand like that, like if you're at a college, if you're at a HBCU and you've got one of their dials with like your school emblem on it, it's like you feel part of like a greater community, you feel part of a family, you know, and that's one of the things that watches do for us, I think, at every stage. And so to be able to deliver that experience at an accessible price point for like $80, I think is pretty incredible.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. And to that as well, like, you know, we always talk about like buying like pieces that are like significant to horology versus like buying a fashion watch. Although there's nothing wrong with buying fashion watches, you find that people in their early stages go ahead and they look to a fashion watch. Like I know you had shared on the Minority Report podcast that you had rocked like religiously like a Kenneth Cole watch.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? Like a reaction watch where
that was
like,
my favorite watch for several years.
Which is like really, really cool, but simultaneously you can buy something that does contribute to horology or has like a significant story or something that people can attach to emotionally and build that community around it to say, you know, this is something that I can actually like tell a story and actually be a proud owner in it.
Yeah, for sure. And for those wondering how Spring Break is able to deliver watches at such an accessible price point, they're quartz watches.
Yes.
And for those that don't know what a quartz watch is it's a battery operated watch. And you know, listen, if you're into mechanical, we've got some other options for you that we're going to talk about today, but you can't go wrong with a quartz watch. It's going to be more accurate than a mechanical watch. So if you're a college student who needs to get to class on time, Spring Break is for you. They've got colors. It's fun.
Yes.
They've got a really great story. There's a community behind it.
Yeah.
And it's a fun watch.
Also gender neutral too.
Facts, sure.
Because the colors, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you can see interest in like fuchsia pink or like some kind of turquoise blue or, you know, your traditional black or steel.
Well, that's the thing,
etc.
right? Like if you're a college student and you're also like, you know, fashion conscious, like
Yes.
they've got pretty much every color you can think of. You can match it up with your outfits if you want. So you can definitely own multiple Spring Break watches. So
Yes.
shout out to Spring Break. I think the next one is something that many of you should be or may be familiar with. It's a brand that I've seen they're very popular.
Very popular.
And it is Talley Twine. They range anywhere from about $175 to $235. So a little bit on the pricier side, you're coming up in scale. But Talley Twine is inspired by the revitalized neighborhood in Virginia, symbolizing transformation and success. They featured the distinctive number 7 on the dial, representing completion and perseverance. So we've got some meaning there.
Yes.
Operating independently, rejecting industry gatekeepers, they've created their own lane, producing stylish, high-quality watches that cater to an underserved market. I think the interesting thing about Talley Twine is they offer far more ladies' watches than they do men's watches.
Yes.
And funny enough, my mother-in-law is a fan of Talley Twine. I think she has maybe 2 or 3 watches from them.
Really?
She does, yeah. That was actually my first interaction with the brand. So this is a brand that's actually pretty popular with
Yes.
Black women.
Yes.
And they do some really cool product. Again, quartz watches. But what's cool about them is the configurations of the dial.
Yes.
Right. And oftentimes I've seen them with sort of like almost like a retrograde layout. They do small seconds dials, but they're giving you some diversity in terms of design and dial layout and how to read a watch.
Yes.
That I think is really cool. They also do some heritage pieces.
Yeah, Tuskegee
to
Airman.
Tuskegee Airman in the 1940s. And so just really, really, really cool stuff.
Yeah.
But a really, really great brand.
Well, you know, what's funny too is Talley Twine kind of built this really, really big following during COVID.
Yeah.
And it was like just fitting that, you know, they kind of like caught their steam because, you know, for us, right, we were consuming so much watch content and, you know, building up so much more like watch knowledge. And, you know, a brand like Talley Twine was one that if you hit the Google search, like they were coming up.
They were definitely popping up. They had the SEO popping.
Yes. Like, you know, the cookies was going off, the algorithm was algorithming, and, you know, you couldn't miss seeing a Talley Twine like advertisement on Instagram or anywhere else. And, you know, for them to be as intentional as they are, right? When you talk about the number 7 and completion, shout out to the Hoteps and I gotta throw that out there, you know what I mean? You know, like, you know, what's the knowledge and all that. So always gotta throw in a cultural
Sure.
you know, some kind of cultural relevance. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, please do your homework. But you know, all my brothers know what that's about. But there's intention behind it.
There's intention, there's meaning, philosophy.
Yes.
And I think that's what kind of makes the brand fun, right? It gives you something to talk about outside of sort of like the run-of-the-mill things that we talk about all the time as watch collectors.
Yes.
Like we could talk about references and movements and all this stuff. But, you know, again, continuing on the idea of just wearing watches for fun.
Yes.
And me and you both own a number of pieces that we just have a lot of fun with. It fits in the collection. I think this is a brand that you can equally enjoy if you're a very serious collector or if you're a newbie. You know, if you're looking for a really handsome timepiece and you don't want to break the bank, maybe you want something that's a little more stylish that you can wear with a suit. Talley Twine has some really great product that you should look at. It's a lot of fun.
Yes.
It's a cool brand, means a lot. Listen, they've got a brand that is growing, right? Like it's a name people recognize. And, you know, you could argue that at that point now, it is kind of a conversation piece.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yo, you know Bezel just launched auctions?
Really?
Yeah, they did. You could bid on watches inside the app. They give you notifications on auction drops, and it's still authenticated. Oh, shoot, I won.
Yo, what you win?
Man, don't worry about me, man. Go download the app. Go visit getbezel.com.
Oh, come on, man.
Moving along. So we got the two. We knocked out 5 and 4. Number 3.
Yeah. Now we start getting into the personal and like the personal relationships that we have with a few of these watch businessmen.
Yes. So number 3 is a brand from a gentleman we've had on the show.
Yes.
Shout out to our friend Rotimi.
Yes, sir.
Rotimi is a Nigerian-Canadian entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And he has a watch brand called Sovrygn Watches.
Yes.
And we've had him on the show. If you're watching or listening, you should definitely go and check that out. It was a really, really great episode we shot, I think, over the summer.
Yes.
And he's built this brand from the ground up. So Rotimi's background is in engineering. And so he understands his way around mechanics. And he's producing pretty serious mechanical watch. Not only a mechanical watch, but a complicated mechanical watch.
Yes.
And the timepiece, he's got a number of timepieces that he's released. The one that right now is most topical is the calendar watch, which the two of us actually own. He gifted us two.
Yes.
And it's a great timepiece, and one I think for if you're someone who's looking to get into mechanical watches and you don't want to break the bank, they retail for around $600. So it's a little more elevated, but you're getting the bang for your dollar. It's a lot of watch, I think, for the price. I think the price could even come up a bit.
Yes.
If I'm being honest. And the experience, I think, is what really makes this watch worthwhile. Here's a gentleman that's really doing this more or less on his own, from design to sourcing parts, working with different manufacturers over the phone. And he has produced a really quality product that is growing in popularity with his base. He mentioned many of his clients own 4 and 5 and sometimes 6 of his watches.
Yes. And, to your point, Perry, when you think of building out a brand, what you always refer to, which I admire, is having a good ground game.
Oh, yeah.
And he has a great ground game.
He does, actually. That's a great point.
In terms of just being able to be accessible to his end consumer. He is a one-man show. And I think part of that is the fact that he also was a watch collector himself.
He was, and he shared that story with us.
So from him collecting watches and understanding what he wants from a brand that he's investing in, he's added that good ground game to make sure that he's covering all those bases.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We have to give him credit for that. If there's anything about Rotimi, he will get on a plane.
Yes. This is very true.
Right? He will go and he will promote his brand, and he will meet his clients, he'll meet his customers, and he has an incredible story, and he's truly passionate about timepieces. And I think that's the reason, in part, why his business is growing and is doing so well. He's got a quality product. He's not trying to overcharge anybody. It's a really great price point. It's priced, I think, high enough to make you really appreciate what it is, but to also be able to say, like, I could probably get another one.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing, right? To be competitive in this oversaturated market.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Especially too, as we get into more watches, right? Like there's always the notion of like overselling.
Okay.
And he's someone that just has the right amount of push to be able to buy in to his clientele.
Yeah.
And so with someone like Rotimi that is able to cover all those bases, he puts himself in a position to win because, to your point, he can charge a whole lot more.
He probably could.
He really pretty much can, but he understands that he wants to make the brand inclusive for all to be able to enjoy it, especially over the ideas we mentioned earlier, like fashion watches. Like there's still so many people that aren't exposed to the idea of horology, and I keep going back to, your interview with Minority Report, because I absolutely loved it. And I texted you this morning. I told you that.
You did. Thank you. Shout out to Carell.
Yes. Shout out to Carell and Eric, because the funniest thing, I love when they said, Perry, can you tell us what horology is? And it was so good because like you broke it down to its simplicity. And there's so many people that still don't know, the study of time.
Yeah. I mean, it's an incredible community, and that's how we've been able to meet so many great people, including with Timmy. That was really enjoyable that I was able to do that. Shout out to those guys. I want to talk about real quick the complication that he's selling. So he has this watch called the Calendar.
Yes.
And we'll throw up a picture of it so you guys can see it. But this watch has 3 subdials. And it's got a power reserve at 12 o'clock.
Yes.
And so when you get deep into watches, these are the kinds of things from not only a design perspective, but from an experiential perspective that you appreciate, right? It's like when you really fall in love with watches, there's something about, that getting up and setting your watch and making sure everything is correct that you really enjoy. It's almost like a meditative state. And that's usually an experience that's afforded to people who are spending a lot of money on watches, like a lot of money, like absurd amounts of money. And to be able to deliver that in a $600 package, I think is really, really incredible. And that was my most enjoyable experience about Rotimi's watch, was that you had this timepiece that not only told you the month, that told you the date, had a power reserve indicator, and then it had a 24-hour indicator.
Yes.
Right? And so it had all this going on in various different variants and colors that I thought were expertly paired, right? Like I think about the steel watch that he had with the plum dial.
Yes.
Absolutely fire.
Yes.
Then there's the steel one he had with sort of the aqua dial.
Yes.
Crazy. Then he did like some PVD, black stainless steel stuff.
Yes.
Like he's got the full gamut, the full run in terms of product. And it's a watch that I think most people will really, really enjoy. Especially, and even if you have if you're a heavy collector, a lot of us sometimes we travel, we go on vacation, we don't want to bring some of that other stuff with us. Here's a watch that you can take on vacation, not have to really worry about, but still people might comment and be like, yo, that's a nice watch. What do you got on right there?
For sure. And, when you talk about, a $600 compact package of greatness
with a sick bracelet, by the way.
Yes. When you stack it up against those integrated sport bracelet watches, AP has had a annual calendar power reserve timepiece.
Sure.
40 grand. Vacheron Constantine with the overseas has one.
Sure.
40 grand.
Yeah.
You look at other brands that have been able to do it, right? And when you break down, of course, price points of watches, right? The name carries a premium. The movement carries a premium. The materials carry a premium. So we understand why it's priced where it is.
The finishing and everything. Yeah, for sure.
100%. But simultaneously, the watches all do the same thing.
Yeah.
So trying to, flex how much you pay for a watch is a watch to a watch.
100%.
And Rotimi has been able to master that and understand that.
He's done a really great job at delivering a really great product.
Yes.
And the watch is a hit.
Yes.
Hands down, it is.
Yes.
No matter where you are in your collecting journey, it's a lot of fun.
For sure.
Moving along.
Yes.
We've got some other friends with a watch company. So these guys are based out of Paris.
Yes. But they find their way all the way to the United States.
We run into them everywhere. So we ran into them in Miami.
Yes.
We were hanging out with them in Geneva.
Yes.
I think we saw them in DC as well.
We did see them in DC.
We saw them in DC. And this is a brand, it's called Halchimy.
Yes.
And their price points range from about $3,400 to about $6,500.
Yes.
And it's owned by these two gentlemen. One name is Kevin, and the other gentleman's name is...
It's Nicholas.
Oh, shout out to Nick.
So shout
Nick
out to
Kevin,
Nick.
yes.
And shout out to Nick and Kevin. If I'm not mistaken, I think they're brothers.
Okay, yeah.
They may be brothers.
But they have their own patented modular system. And this allows wearers to interchange watch components for a fully customizable experience. Mm-hmm. And so the brand merges, they say, this technological innovation with a timeless elegance. Each watch tells a story of transformation, self-actualization, and their whole thing, which I love, is that this is a brand for entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Right? That's kind of like their focus. And they have this, if you go to their website, and it's Halchimy, and it's spelled Halchimy.
Yes. They've been able to position themselves, right? Because they have been doing this for a while, well over a decade, right? Starting the brand in 2012 and, of course, being Parisian, but understanding that they have to tap into the U.S. market.
Sure.
So I wanted to kind of throw that in there because I'm sorry Nick's name got past me, but please, I didn't want to break
No.
break your focus.
Yeah. And so they created this brand with sort of like entrepreneurs in mind. And I thought what was interesting is if you visit their website, they have a special club that you can join.
Yes.
The only requirement is that you are an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Right. And so that you have founded and started a business. And they have sort of like a tier system, tier membership system. And so it appears to me that they're accepting entrepreneurs at any level, but this is not only a watch brand, this is a brand that you can buy into where you can have access to other entrepreneurs, where you can sort of get mentorship. You can go on trips where they have speakers and different engagements that you can participate in. And so investing in purchasing an Halchimy watch in another way is sort of investing in yourself and in your future. And I just thought that was like a really, really great concept for a watch brand.
Yes. And I have to agree with you because, as we speak about being able to bridge the gap with your end consumer, you are not only getting people to invest in a brand, you're also getting them to invest in themselves. So you kind of do that double entendre of
double entendre.
Where someone says, "Oh, is this watch an investment?" Well, if you buy a Halchimy watch, then yes, it is an investment. Like a true investment. Because when you look at the secondary market, especially when I'm consulting with people, I tell them that the watch is only worth what someone's willing to pay.
Yeah.
So sure, that Daytona today was $60,000, where it is now, maybe lost 50, 60% of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, sure, you can invest that way if you think that's an investment.
Right.
But a true investment is in a community. It's in a group of people that want to see you win or will support you in winning to be able to invest in yourself to afford those luxuries that you're clawing for.
Yep.
So I have to say their strategic output in that is one that I don't think I've, come to know, right? There are other brands that do something very similar, but I don't think they get as much in return, right? It's like you can invest in this and be a part of a club, but you're just a part of a club to say you're a part of a club.
Yeah. No, I understand that argument. I think also, though, with respect to Halchimy, it's important to highlight that, like, they have the club, they have the community, but legitimately have invested in the manufacturing and production of this watch. This is a Swiss-made timepiece, mechanical movement. They offer a time only, but they also have a special GMT watch that they've designed with a special calendar that kind of looks like a crescent moon. It's got a really interesting design to it, which is kind of cool. Some really great dial configurations in terms of colors and patterns. And again, their custom lug system, where if you visit the website, you'll notice like very similar styles with different lug types. And there's that customization aspect to it that's a lot of fun. But also, like when you handle the watch, from materials to make to heft, it's a high quality piece.
Yes.
You know, this is a Swiss made watch company that is owned by two Black gentlemen.
Yes. And to tap into price point, because we didn't get there yet. Their price point
is elevated.
Very, very elevated.
Yeah, this is a luxury watch. This is a Black-owned luxury watch company.
Yes. For, you know, the havings of 4,000 to 6,000 and can go on to more, but more of their core models will kind of be in that price point.
Right.
And it definitely merits that. When you handle the watch, you kind of understand why that price point is where it is.
100%. And we've spoken to them. They'll be on the show.
Yes.
We'll have them on the couch soon. And that'll be a lot of fun. We get to talk more in depth about their story and bringing this to fruition. But I have to say, very, very impressed. The product is awesome. It's a lot of fun. We got to handle it when we hung out with them in Miami and when we hung out with them in Geneva. And they really do this. These are guys that are very serious about their business. They travel the world promoting and selling their watches. And they're winning people over one by one, piece by piece. Shout out to them. This isn't a hustle. It's the real deal.
Yes, yes.
Halchimy Watches.
Yes.
That brings us to number one.
My number one.
Please.
Shout out to our buddy David
Carrington.
Yes, David Carrington from Compass Timepiece.
Originally from Brooklyn.
He's from Brownsville.
He's from Brownsville. Now he's a Los Angeles
native. But you know, we had him on the show, and you know, I just want to take the time out to thank him as much as he thanked us, right? Because his episode was one of our most viewed and favored episodes.
It was a very popular episode.
Very, very popular episode outside of all of the celebrities that we had on our show and C-suite. Like, for us to sit down with him and bring exposure to his brand, he was eternally grateful. But simultaneously for us, especially me coming from where we come from, for him to decide to step into this space to actually take action was something that I had to give him his flowers for.
No, absolutely. And so David has created this brand called Compass Timepieces.
Yes.
It's based in Los Angeles, but the watches are produced in an area of Switzerland, which is known for watchmaking. This is a legendary place, and this is Le Chaux de France.
Yes.
And his story is amazing. I definitely, encourage you to check out the episode that we had with him when we shot with him just last year. But here's a gentleman who no formal training in watches or watch design, but dove into it out of passion and created an entire line of timepieces that I think, people should take pretty seriously.
Yes.
Right. And he's even been since expanding. I think, his price ranges from about $3,300 to about $8,000 for his most expensive timepiece.
Yes.
And he's using different kinds of materials. He's working with serious watchmakers.
Different complications.
And even the packaging is like really, really nice. So he's got several styles. One's called the Explorer. He's got Gratitude, Pathfinder, Titan II, and the Voyager. Mm-hmm. And all of this has to deal with sort of this idea of one's path, following one's calling, one's direction. And he sees, his diving into the watch industry and building this company as sort of his calling and his path.
Yes.
And so I remember one of our favorite pieces was the Explorer, which was this sort of entry level piece at $3,300. He's got the Gratitude, which is a time only. The Explorer, going back to for a second, has a date, but it's also got a and it's not exactly a skeleton, but it's got like a small window to kind of see through.
Yeah.
The Pathfinder, I thought was really, really cool. With this sort of like carbon fiber dial and this mystery seconds sub-dial that I thought was really awesome.
Yeah.
But my absolute favorite was probably the Titan II.
Yes.
And this was a chronograph that sort of acts as a triple date calendar.
Yes.
And, you know, a very serious timepiece for a new brand. Retails at $7,100.
Yes. Yes.
So it's not cheap.
No.
This is a luxury watch brand made in Switzerland by an African-American man.
Yes.
Who lives in Los Angeles. And I have to say, hats off to you.
Yes.
Kudos. We got to handle the product. Very, very impressive.
Yes.
I was very impressed by David and sort of his mission. And, you know, though this is his passion and his project, it is a bit of a family affair, right? Like his wife and children are a big part of him doing this. And was just very, very impressed.
Yes. I have to say too, as well, you know, when you sound off the models and the titles of them, right? It's very intentional. There's a clear message as to what he's trying to accomplish.
Okay.
In terms of inspiring.
Yeah.
And influencing, and also being able to win over the naysayers.
Sure.
And, you know, when you talk about his materials and, you know, the choice of watchmakers that he uses to kind of put these watches together, like this isn't like some kind of base movement, whatever, you know, just throw it in a case and like sell watches. Like this isn't a hustle. Like this is like a lifestyle.
No, 100%.
This is like a true thing. And, you know, for us, I think it's very, very important, and we continue to do, is to be able to share these stories and these watchmakers, well, these businessmen, and hopefully that they will get into watchmaking. But for people to understand that, like, this is a real thing, and this is something that we all should stand behind.
I mean, it's a trend that I definitely hope continues to blossom and grow,
Yes.
right? Like, American watchmaking it's having a moment.
Yes.
You know, there's more guys who are making watches here. Shout out to J.N. Shapiro.
Yes.
There's a couple of brands that are also producing watches or even repurposing watches that are American made, right? Like we see Cornell out of Chicago becoming a thing again. And, you know, so I just hope like that spirit and attitude continues. You know, these guys with respect to like Halchimy and David are producing watches in Switzerland, but I could very easily see in the future with success and support them bringing watch manufacturing or, you know, bringing their business to be manufactured here in the States, which I think would be really cool, right? Like that's another evolution and statement on what's happening in the industry.
Yes.
And, but kudos to them for trying. You know, I personally think anyone who starts a watch brand is a lunatic because you have to be passionate about it. It is probably one of the toughest businesses you can venture out into
100%.
Is selling timepieces,
Yes.
right? Because the field is dominated by a very few
Yes.
that have a lot of market share. And there's a lot of brands out there. There's a lot of voices. And how do you separate yourself from them? How do you stand out? You know, being Black owned is one thing.
Yes.
And that can work.
Yes.
But having and delivering great product is another.
Especially at a price point that is competitive.
Especially at an elevated price point. And
Elevated,
so,
yes.
you know, part of the reason why it was important for us to do this it's to not only show you the diversity of what's out there and exists in terms of Black businessmen who are, creating watch brands, but to show you how serious this is becoming and how serious they're taking it. And so with regard to Sovrygn, Halchimy, and Compass watches, you're seeing a trend, right? And this only continues with your support. So I want to encourage anyone who's watching and listening to really get a look at these brands and to see what it is that they're doing and judge it for yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't take our word for it. Like, one of the beauties about collecting watches, especially from smaller watch brands, is that you can reach out to the makers and the owners on your own and they'll respond to you.
Yes.
You can have a conversation with Timmy, David, and Kevin and his brother. Like,
Yes.
they will talk to you. If you reach out to them on Instagram, via email, you have questions, they will respond.
Yes, they
right?
will.
They're in the business of building communities and talking to their future clients. So I encourage anyone listening and watching to reach out to them and ask them about the product because they're doing exceptional work. And I don't think they're finished. They're really just getting started. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. But shout out to all of those gentlemen. And I think we wanted to do honorable mention.
Yes.
And I had an idea. Well, we did in
Yes.
terms of where we would take it, and we'll take it there. But I think we should do 2 honorable mentions.
Yes.
And so I'll start with probably the least surprising.
Yes.
But, in terms of Black watchmaking, we've not talked about any Black women in watchmaking.
Yes.
But there is a prominent one.
Yes.
And shout out to Daniella Dufour,
Yes.
who is the daughter of legendary and esteemed watchmaker Philippe Dufour.
Put some respect on her name.
Put some respect on her name. This is a Black woman, young Black woman, who is studying under her father, who is one of the greatest watchmakers this world has ever seen.
Yes.
With a very legendary career, who's made incredible product and incredible movements. And she is poised to take over the family business.
Yes.
And it'll be interesting to see what happens with her and her career. But this is definitely someone you want to keep an eye out for, especially as you continue to look towards what's happening in the upper echelons of the watch industry and the watch market. Philippe Dufour is legendary. His watches can be had for the upwards of 6 figures to 7 figures, right? If you're looking at the right stuff. And this is his daughter. And he's teaching her.
Yes.
And she's taking on the business. And
Yes.
it'll be really interesting to see what happens there. So I employ all of you watching and listening to look her up and see what's happening with her. And just keep your eyes peeled because I anticipate there'll be some really cool surprises coming our way from Daniella Dufour and the Dufour family in the next couple of years.
Yes.
But surprises being what they are,
Yes. I love when you do this.
we're talking about Black-owned brands.
Yes.
So the surprise is this is a brand where it's not 100% Black-owned,
Yes.
right? It's got a very diverse group of ownership
Yes.
that happens to be all family. But shout out to Oliver Audemars,
Yes.
who is a chairman on the board of Audemars Piguet and happens to be a Black man.
Yes.
He is part of the family that owns Audemars Piguet
Yes.
and an entrepreneur in his own right who's launched and started and sold businesses and has decided to participate in the family business. And, I feel like a lot of people outside of the watch industry, at least, don't really know this. But I guess you could consider AP in part a Black-owned brand. And this doesn't necessarily add to, nor does it take away from the history or the prestige of the brand, but I think it's just an interesting note. You know what I'm saying? And that note being that people of color, men and women from all walks of life and different nationalities have a place in this industry. Mm-hmm. Whether you are an entrepreneur who sees an opportunity to create a product and serve an underrepresented community, or whether you're a fan of watches and you just want to get in and deliver a quality product that you believe in. Mm-hmm. But there's also a bit of legacy involved.
Yes.
And I think that's important too, to acknowledge this gentleman who, again, I have to emphasize is not only someone who shares the name, but is a very serious entrepreneur in his own right.
Yes.
Right? Very accomplished man who happens to be part of this family and is now on the board of directors helping to steer the ship along with their newly appointed CEO, Ilaria.
Yes.
And so I just think that's important to note. Many people might be surprised at that, but honorable mention out to Audemars Piguet.
No, for sure. And, when you think of AP, right, in terms of one of the most forward-thinking brands.
Facts.
They definitely are ones that embrace the culture.
Sure.
And ones that are daring enough to stand behind some of the most prolific African-American or...
They got a reputation for it. Shout out to them.
They have...
Damn, am I getting an AP again?
I mean, I have to say, and I think something with all due respect, when we put out this episode, right, as two Black men, African-American, and to have this episode derived on Black watchmaking or Black watch brands, it's a sense of pride to be able to expose the fact that we also in this space as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's important. Listen, representation is a big thing. You have to see yourself in the space to create a space for yourself.
Yes.
Right? And shout out to all of these people and these men and women who are following their passions.
Yes.
And ultimately that's really what it's about. It's not necessarily about it being owned by people that look like us. We're highlighting them because I think these are brands that ought to be talked about that don't get a lot of light, and we're going to shed light on them.
Yeah.
And we should. But at the same time, I think emphasis should be placed on the fact that they really just happen to be Black.
Yes.
Right? And these are people that are forging businesses, doing good business,
yes,
delivering incredible product, and have incredible stories.
Yeah. This is Black or not. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Black or not, business is business.
Business is business, and we're counting coins.
Yes, we are. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's all good. But, I think, no, it is something that should be highlighted along with other things. And it's interesting. And it's a really great time in watches, I think, for the industry. This is something that I think the watch industry has a bad reputation. Mm-hmm. It has a reputation for being incredibly pretentious.
Yes.
It has a reputation for being chauvinistic.
Uninviting.
And those are statements that are true.
Yes.
They're valid.
Yes.
Those things exist in this industry like they exist anywhere else. However, I also happen to think that same industry, more than other industries, happens to be the most inviting, happens to be the most communal, and happens to afford patrons, collectors, and businessmen the most opportunities to forge and create something for themselves. And so that's part of the reason why I think this is important. It's also highlight the watch community and what we have and how special it actually is.
Yes.
Because this is a community that spans different countries, nationalities, ethnicities, gender, etc. And the community at large is one of the most incredible communities I've ever been afforded to participate in. I've not experienced anything like the watch industry in any other industry. And for that, I love it forever. This has been another episode of Wrist Check Podcast or WCP Weekly, whatever you'd like to call it.
Yes, yes.
Again, want to encourage you guys to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share with your friends. Also, make sure you look into the brands that we spoke about this evening.
Yes.
You may be surprised. There's some really great product out there. And shout out to all of those blazing their own trail.
Yes, sir.
And we'll see you in a week. Deuces.
Peace.